Hey, Brad, welcome to Hope Stream. Excited to have you here. Two podcasters just chatting.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we ran into each other. I think we were both working or supporting Mark Rossman on his film, which I think they just wrapped up filming on Keep Coming Back, which is really cool. As the parent of somebody who struggled, that's going to be really cool. And, you've got a top 0.5% podcast globally, right? Like,
Yeah, I think so,
I
yeah.
was looking at I was peeping your stats, which is amazing. You have over 5 million downloads of your podcast. It's huge. Can you even believe that? Like, you just started it in 2022, 21, 22.
Yeah, and I can't believe it. I went to record my first episode, thought I had things figured out. Couldn't even record the episode. Started it from my basement of my last place, just sort of as something to try out. People are gravitated to it. I still don't have all the answers to why or how, but it's been a really cool journey, especially getting to meet so many people along the way.
Yeah. Well, and you also have a community, right, that folks can be part of if they want to get some support while they're working towards sobriety.
Yeah, we have an online virtual community. Actually, it's kind of unofficial, official, but we've just launched an app too, sober motivation app to invite people
Sweet.
to the community. One of the things I just see so often is getting sober, not drinking, sobering up is really the starting line. So what do we
Right.
do from there? And doing it all alone, of course, it's possible, but it's such an uphill battle. People burn out and it's really tough. So bringing people together is a huge passion of mine to let people know they're not alone. We all share similar stories. If one way didn't work, it doesn't mean that there's not something else that might work for you. And we have just, yeah, very candid conversations about different topics and, ways in our life, but not so much about, quitting drinking or getting sober. It's more about what comes next. How do we deal with life on life's terms? Not so much that initial decision or, maybe an intervention of some sort. Something happens there, but what does the rest of the journey look like? And how do we carry this on long term?
Yeah. If only it was that easy, right? That just getting the substance out of the body was the answer.
Yeah.
That's that's part of the answer, but not the whole answer. So, yeah, that's really interesting. Well, I would love to just first get some background on your story. I always love hearing these stories, and I know they're really inspirational for parents. So, if you were to hop in a time machine and go back and tell us your story, where would you start and what would that sound like?
Yeah. Hop in the time machine. Here we go. I would say things in my life. I mean, even from the beginning, my mom had twins at 16. So that was kind of always a part that stood out to me at the time. When you're younger, you don't really notice that that's a challenging thing to do. I mean, I have three kids now and I'm 38 and I'm still figuring things out. So twins at 16. My mom was finishing up when we grew up in a very Catholic background. We grew up in Canada, going to Catholic school, Catholic church. So that was obviously a big challenge for her with that experience. So we lived with my grandparents. They looked after us. For the most part, my mom would finish up high school, go to college to be a nurse. And at the time in the US, they were hiring a lot of nurses. So I remember she would drive down for a weekend, go here, go there, apply for jobs, do job interviews. And then we ended up moving when I was about 6 years old to Waco, Texas. My brother and my mom and I. So just the three of us, but we had a lot of support. We had a big family. My grandparents helped us out. So this was a big shift in life that I really only
It's
figured out.
huge.
Yeah, I really only figured this out, so much later down the road. But I remember a lot of anxiety creeping into my life. And now this is all hindsight at the time. I didn't have any idea what was kind of going on, but sort of questioning, sense of belonging. Where do I fit into the world? What my role? Even though the culture from Canada, down to Waco, Texas, I mean, there's still McDonald's on every corner and Burger King and stuff, but it was a different type of culture environment in some aspects too. So trying to fit in, being the new guy, that was difficult, trying to make friends. I had ADHD early on too, which has been interesting because I've been digging back into that a little bit too on this my sober quest, maybe more recently than for many years, but I was always kind of on the search, right? Yeah, I struggled a lot with impulse control, kind of reflect back, like, why did you say that? Why did you do that? Like, not really thinking
Right.
things through, not thinking of the bigger picture, how this could play out. So that showed up. I was getting suspended from school in grade 6, 7, 8. In 8, I would do in school suspension. which is so interesting. You look back on it, like what a weird experience, what a weird experience all of that was. But to kind of sum up that, I think I was just trying to figure out who I was. I never knew who I was. I never felt comfortable. From the outside looking in, you probably wouldn't notice that. But the behavior started to kind of spiral out of control. My mom met my stepdad, and they implemented so many interventions. I remember a stretch of my life, learning centers, therapists, doctors, psychiatrists. I mean, every intervention under the sun. I felt like I was always,
Mm.
seeing somebody, right? Let's figure out what the heck is going on. Let's do this different medication. Maybe it's Ritalin, maybe it's Adderall, maybe it's Zoloft, maybe it's Wellbutrin, maybe it's Prozac. And everybody was trying to help. Nobody was like not trying to help. I think where I struggled the most was communicating what was actually going on with me. I had no idea. I just absolutely had no idea of how to articulate how things were going. I started to have suicidal thoughts. I ended up in a psych ward hospital when I was 16 and when I was 17. And the interesting part is I never even really did drugs or alcohol at this point. I never was really into it. I mean, I tried it. But I kind of coined it up to, I was just never really a cool kid. Like nobody, when I go back to it, as tough as it is to hear, people wouldn't have probably trusted me to sort of get into the, other stuff, right? So I wasn't invited to stuff. I wasn't hanging out with people. I had a few friends, but I jumped from like the skater guy trying to be to like try out for sports, but was always, cut from the team. It was kind of like always showing up late to dinner, that's what it seemed like. You only realize this though when you look back, right? Of like, wow, there was a lot that went into this. And I kind of say in my story too, like I was destined to find an escape from all of this. I just hadn't found it yet. So I went to
Right.
the psych ward the second time. My parents were like, you got to go to treatment. And at this time it was kind of coined up, behavioral treatment. You got to kind of get these behaviors in check, right? And my parents were just struggling so much with everything. I mean, the grades were down the drain. I didn't really do well in school ever. That destroyed my self-esteem too, right? I mean, you got to be put in this box, and I struggled with reading and writing and everything that you're tested on for a guy like me. Like I had absolutely no interest. I never read a book. I never studied for a test. Final exams, I would just mark off random answers, go play basketball with my buddies. Like that's all that I cared about. But the world, on the other hand, valued, education. If you get this wrong, you're doomed for eternity. Like you'll never figure it out. This is your way forward to the American dream. And then I was just like, well, it's not for me. So I think more subconsciously than sort of consciously, it was just like, you're screwed either way, man. So may as well make a name for yourself and have some fun. So I went to the psych ward, UNC Chapel Hill, for the second time. My parents had this guy come in. And it's actually interesting because I was digging through these files the other day, and they had like their, what do you call them? Intervention letters. I hope that you choose, this
Right.
path, right? So this guy came in to an interview. Hey, it's a 3-month program. It's like an hour from your house. You'll be able to finish, graduate high school, do all that cool stuff. And I just was like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way I'm going to any, like, I didn't see a problem. As wild as it is,
Like, what are you talking about?
I was like, a program for what? And I had already been arrested at this time too. When I was 16, I got arrested. Buddies and I were garage hopping. Someone will leave their garage open. We'd help ourselves to stuff. Terrible, terrible thing to do. And so I was on probation for that. So there was just madness all the way around. So then my parents had to kind of ace up their sleeve of a program that was, you didn't have to say you wanted to go to. So they hired this security, crew to come and pick me up at the hospital and brought me to this I had no idea. I didn't even know this type of stuff existed.
Right.
And they brought me to this program outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. On the way there, I ran away from them. I stopped at a rest stop and I said, I got to use the bathroom. And I ran, and the cops, and every couple hours on the run. And I kind of draw that into, that's the only way I knew how to deal with stuff. Like it was just run, whether it was like that or whether it was just internally. I didn't know how to work through stuff or process things, or never learned those skills on how to cope with things, life's ups and downs, and what kind of goes on around. He said I would be a 1-year program. I would go to this place, Peninsula Village. It's not around anymore. Change to something else, but I go there. It was a wilderness program. They kept you locked down, in this basement for about 3 months. I was hard-headed, so I didn't do any,
Wow.
I wasn't making any progress. I was still so far in the denial phase of everybody's got this completely wrong. Like, what happened with everybody? What is going on? And then after that, you move out to the wilderness program, live in a cabin kind of in the woods. And there's a bunch of different clans, they called them. And I was part of the Bat clan and ended up doing really well there. Moved up the ranks to sort of achieve a level that only a handful of people actually do. Got out and then sort of, to keep it short and sweet, got introduced to drugs and alcohol.
Can I ask, did you like being outdoors? Like, was the outdoor part of it better than, like, if you were to have stayed in school? Was that kind of a step up, or how did you feel about being in the wilderness part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I love that part of it. That was a really cool part to be in that and have a purpose. Like, even though
Yeah,
it was in treatment and everything, you have a purpose, you have structure. Like, I do really well. Like, I do well in jail. I do well in treatment. I do well in hospitals. Like, I do well in that. It's
right.
when I'm kind of left up to my own devices, at that
Yeah.
time anyway, it's like, oh, that's where the trouble comes in. So
Yeah, when there's no borders, right, to sort of contain what's going on.
yeah, and I just hadn't developed those skills yet. I mean, in my life today, it's a lot more of freedom, of things, but I have the skills now to say, okay, here's the guidelines. Like,
Yeah.
here's where you live in between here, right? Based on values and what I believe is important. But then I wasn't really connecting with it, even though I was, raised well. My parents were incredible. They were great. Like, they did everything they could. My grandfather, before he passed away, he called me the $1 million man, just with all the money that it costs to, try to figure this out. And
Yeah.
then when I got into, drinking and everything, I had improved my life through the treatment program and felt a lot better about myself, but I was able to sort of get the same results, $5 pill. So I was like, wow, I can do all of that work. Or I can just take this and forget about all the insecurities and everything I'm coming up short in life. And I was like, wow, this is not a bad little trade-off. And
Right, like, how did I not find this sooner?
yeah, where have you been at? Drinking too, just picked up steam. I got my own apartment. When I got out of the treatment program, I was doing well. I was enrolled in college. I got my own place. I started dating this really nice girl that I'd known from before, just not into doing madness like I was. And yeah, I got my own place. I got a car. I was like, wow, life is good. But the problem is, when life is good, you can convince yourself that, shit, I don't need to go to my psychiatrist anymore. I don't need to go to therapy. I don't need to go to Celebrate Recovery. I don't need to go to the alumni meetings. And I don't need to take my medication. And slowly but surely, I just took everything off the board. And yeah, that was the slippery slope. It did not happen in one day or one moment. It was just,
Right.
I knew best.
Hey, friend, if you have ever finished an episode of Hope Stream and thought, okay, but what do I actually do when they come home tonight? That is exactly what the stream is for. Because knowing about something like craft or mindfulness and knowing how to act on that something are two different things. For the next 14 days, you can try the stream totally free. No credit card, no commitment, just full access to the education, the live coaching and support calls, and a totally private community of women who understand this experience with zero explanations needed. Start your free trial membership at hopestreamcommunity.org, and I'll see you inside. Okay, back to the show. Yeah, and I'm sure as you got out of the program and you get on your feet, you get your apartment and college and the girlfriend, your parents are probably like, yes, it worked. He's doing great. Like this, like we're kind of through the rough patch. That would be my, at least I don't want to put thoughts in your parents' heads, but that's what I would have been thinking. Like, finally, things are on track.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there probably was. I can't really recall exactly, but I'm sure that was. I mean, to say, okay, things have turned around. But I do remember when I started canceling things, because I would have probably been under my mom's insurance, right? She would have probably noticed that,
Right.
why is this not happening anymore? Why is that not happening anymore? And I think they tried to stay in their own lane. Like, they weren't hassling me about stuff. I just don't think anybody knew where the road was going either. Wouldn't that be great if we
Yeah.
just knew where things were going and we could take a left or a right here and avoid that. But I don't think they knew, and I sure as heck didn't know.
Yeah. So you find a great solution to all these problems. Was it drugs and alcohol, or did you have a
Yeah.
particular
Yeah,
substance?
yeah. I mean, the first drug I ever did was cocaine, which is like oddly enough. Well, I mean, I had a little drink of vodka from my parents' stash or whatever when I was a lot younger, but I was just like, that's disgusting. But that was really the first one where I kind of connected the dots of like,
Mm,
this equals alleviation from that. Not that
yeah.
clearly at the time, but I was like, okay, that the world doesn't feel so heavy anymore. And when all of this, to kind of go back to the ADHD thing, when all of this spiraled out of control, it was out of control for a long time. But when it really took a nosedive, is I was taking Adderall in high school, and had missed a dose one day when I was like 16. And it felt like I was living in a whole nother world. And from that
Mm,
point on, I just lied about taking it. And I think sort of if there were bumpers in my life, in those decisions, they were gone. It
yeah.
was gone.
So that's super interesting. I want to ask you a couple questions about that. So you were diagnosed ADHD. Do you remember how old you were when you got that diagnosis?
No, I mean, probably pretty young, 7, 8, 9.
Elementary school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then you were on medication because this is something that is super confusing for parents. They feel like, well, wait, I don't want to put my kid on a drug when they're in elementary school or fourth grade, fifth grade, or whatever it is. And the medical perspective is it is actually to find the right medication, obviously, the right dose and the right formulation can actually prevent the likelihood or lower, I guess, the risk of substance use later on. So when you just said that you missed a dose, so you had been taking it, you miss it, what was the difference? Like, what did you feel when you didn't take it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the kind of side effects of it is it kind of made me a bit shy. So not really encouraging to
Mm,
connect with other people, kind of maybe in my own little world a little bit more. And when
yeah.
I just didn't take it, it just opened up the whole world. Like I could just I kind of turned into like this class clown. I was really getting a lot of acceptance and encouragement from peers. I just really seemed to open up socially. And all of that, even though it came with consequence, was worth it to like try to find out like who am I? Not really
Yeah.
thinking of it in those terms, but it just went away. And I mean, the risk taking, and I think a big part of it too was the need for dopamine. You know, I mean, the dopamine's running low in the brain, so I'm looking to to be stimulated. I mean, school's not stimulating enough. I'm not really plugging into sports anymore, so that's not doing it. And I'm really looking for acceptance and to fit in and just to what can I make of all of this, right? I got a couple years left in high school, so yeah, it was a big turn, but like nobody really kind of knew, it kind of came out of nowhere. And it wasn't
Right.
something I was telling, my folks, right? Or the assistant principal or the security guard or the police officer that I was always having to talk to.
Wow. So you hid the fact that you were not taking it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's a conundrum for parents, I think, the ADHD thing, because I would say just of all the parents that I see and work with, I would say 85% of the young people have ADHD, either diagnosed or undiagnosed. So it is such a precursor to these kinds of struggles. Could I ask about your brother? So you have a twin
Yeah.
brother. What is going on with him all this time?
Yeah. I mean, he's doing all right. He kind of found his lane in video games. He used to play as the game Counter Strike. I'm sure it's
Hmm.
still around, but that
Okay.
was definitely like his sort of thing. I remember he wanted to drop out of high school and, he had that idea. My parents like, we'll turn off the internet. And that straightened him out pretty quick. He was good to get back on track. I mean, he wasn't perfect, but he was good to keep his head down and get back on track. He definitely didn't have the same troubles I did. I mean, my parents, man, I already feel for them. I would feel for them even more. And then I have a younger brother too. A younger brother came
Oh
along
my.
too. My mom and stepdad had him. So yeah, he was in the mix too.
Wow. Okay, so that's very interesting. So your twin brother is kind of watching you go through this, but he's not following the same path necessarily.
No, no, not at all.
Okay. So you're on your own in college. You have found cocaine.
Yeah.
What happens after that?
Yeah, I mean, that was just kind of opening the door up to, like, trying things, it wasn't a horrible experience. Definitely not like what you see in the movies where you kinda do it one day, everything's gone the next. That wasn't my story anyway. I think what that did was just kind of a permission slip. I think every time we cross a line, we say we're never gonna cross, it just kind of opens up the door for, what else is out there, right? We're more willing to
Mhm.
try more. I remember like it was yesterday. We were sitting around in my apartment there playing a poker game, and the guy took out a bottle of pills. And I said, "Hey, man, if you got a headache or something," this is how naive I was. Like, I had no idea about this stuff. And I said, "If you have a headache or something, we could just go put your chips aside. You could play another night, whatever. And you don't have to hang out." And then he's,
So sweet.
yeah. And then he's like, "No, this is a Percocet or whatever." I said, "Oh, well, that's interesting. What's that all about?" And, "Oh, it makes you feel good." And I said, "Oh, okay, let me try that out." And I mean, like a rocket ship took off. It checked all the boxes. It really
Yeah.
did. It checked all the boxes. And yeah, I just went on the search and I found somebody who was close to me through Google to figure out what this stuff was because I had no idea. No idea. And
Yeah.
I ended up getting a whole bunch of it, a whole bunch of this stuff from somebody that they knew. I kind of keep the story vague for them.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
weren't
yeah.
into this stuff,
We don't
but
need details.
yeah, but for somebody that they knew, I ended up with a whole shoebox of this stuff and I took it every day, all day for 30 days. And then at the end of, well, 30-ish days, I don't know exactly what it was, but I remember like a month. When I ran out, I went into withdrawal, but I had no idea that
Mm,
that was even possible. I didn't know. I mean, I was that naive. And I think a lot of us were then, right? It comes in a prescription bottle. I mean, if it says take two, we've all
yeah.
doubled the dose of Tylenol. So what's the big deal to
Right.
have 4 or 6 or 8? And when it wears off, you feel a little bit unwell. You take one and then it's like, oh, okay, no big deal.
Mhm.
So then when
And were you still functioning? Like, you're
oh
still going to
yeah.
school and doing all that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing all right. I do remember one time I was driving to school. It was a 2-lane road, and I don't even know all the details. That I passed out at a red light with my foot on the brake. For how long, I don't know. What I do remember from it is I woke up and there was a firefighter opening my door of my car. And then later that night, I used to work at a restaurant. That was another big pitfall for me. Restaurant industry. And I worked there, and a guy that went to the same college, he said, "Man, I went by your car. I was honking my horn and everything." And it's a pretty busy road, like pretty busy little 2-lane road where to get past me, you'd have to go around. And he was like, "Yeah, you were just sleeping or something, man." And I was like, "Oh, man." But when the firefighter opened the door, I just hit the gas. Like, I was just like, and that's all I remember from it. So yeah, I mean, I was still doing what I had to do. Was I doing well? No, not at all.
Yeah. And you're not thinking at this point, like, "I am a drug user."
No.
You're just living life
Yeah,
and
it's just
using, yeah, just coping.
yeah, like everybody gets these medications, right? Everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
So interesting that you really were so naive to that, that it just made sense. I mean, and we hear this all the time from our kids once we can finally get to a place to communicate with them, which is, well, it just made sense. It solved a problem. Like, what's the big deal? I don't understand. So, but this was at a time when Percocet was really Percocet, not Percocet with, or fentanyl with a little bit of Percocet in it. So you were getting actual Percocet.
Hmm. Yeah, things have changed. Things have changed a lot compared to when I was doing it. I was even talking with a friend the other day. I didn't hear of anybody dying from anything.
Yeah.
Never. I mean, maybe uh, overdose, maybe like once, but not
Right.
not like, in today's world. It was a completely different time. And it was sort of when things were really picking up steam, 2008, 2009, where these things were flooded everywhere. And then what happens with time is your tolerance builds. So what 3 pills might last you a day, now you need 20 and you need 30.
Mm.
And that's where things escalated to. And then a buddy of mine was like, "You're wasting all your money on this stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, I am wasting all my money. Is there a better solution, a cheaper one?" It's like, "Yeah, heroin." It's like, "Oh yeah, let's do let's do that.
Let's do that.
Yes, cheaper. Okay. Better bang for your buck." Like, it's wild to even think back, but I didn't really even bat an eye at it. I didn't even really think too much on it. Maybe a second or two. And yeah, that's a good idea. And then
Wow.
that's where we went. And I mean, to keep a long story short, everything that I ended up having or working towards or getting, I lost everything. And it wasn't all overnight, but I got evicted from the apartment. The girlfriend left. The car got impounded by the police while committing crime. I was breaking into cars. I ended up getting convicted felon at 18 years old. Job market, it really slims down at that point. College opportunities really slim down. Your whole life really slims down.
Yeah.
So I had to provide a DNA sample, to the state. I was living in North Carolina at this time, and I had to provide DNA sample and do felony probation. Interesting part, though, when I was on probation at 16, not doing substances, my probation officer, I mean, she was a real hard ass. Doing her job, and I don't have any hard feelings about it, but used to have to do the pee in a cup, which was weird. I was 16, peeing in front of this guy. And I was like, okay, this is
Right.
kind of weird. But I put myself there, so I own that. But when I was 18 and on felony probation, I didn't have to do samples. I told them that it was for credit card debt. And they bought that story. They bought it. So I appeared
Wow.
as if I had things kind of together. So I did that for a bit. Everything dissolved with time. I got on methadone. And I was drinking too throughout this whole thing. I mean, that was a consistent. We were partying, and I drank and partied every night. The girlfriend left. I had another buddy of mine move in, and he was well connected to the college party scene. So we just partied every night. And how I even survived, I don't know. I think about the way I used to live. Like, even if I did it for one day in today's world, like, there's no way I would make it. There's no way.
Yeah. You would be wrecked for a month.
Yeah. So I got on the methadone. I didn't know anything about it. It was sort of another thing.
How did that happen? Was that through, like, a doctor or a
Yeah.
treatment program, or
Yeah.
how did that transition happen?
Yeah. So, I mean, they were probably like fairly new-ish then. Suboxone wasn't really a thing, or in towards the tail end of my methadone kind of experience. It was a thing, but it was expensive. You had to have insurance, and it was super
Mm.
expensive. And I didn't have any of the above. So the methadone was like $15 a day. So I used to drive to this clinic and yeah, just get the methadone every day. And it served its purpose. I mean, I'm not like, I shared on one podcast sort of my experience, and somebody had emailed me. They were upset with me about being against something. And I'm saying, I'm not against anything. Whatever works, like, I'm all for. It was essential for me to figure things out. But I also hit a spot after 10 months where I was like, this is great. I mean, I'm not doing drugs anymore, but I'm also just numbed out 24/7. And I have to drive to this clinic half an hour each way. I have no car, no money, barely have a job
Yeah.
here and there. I have to go to my parents' place and work in their backyard for $15 an hour because they're not giving any handouts. I have to do that. And I'm like, I kind of just had this moment of clarity. Is like, dude, you might not be doing the other stuff and your life is definitely better, but like, you got more potential than this, man. You cannot live like this.
Oh, interesting.
For me, that was sort of the thing. So I went to the people at the clinic and I said, hey, I got to get off this stuff. Like, I want to do something else. I mean, there was a lot of things. I couldn't really keep it going. Financially, I couldn't. My brother was like, hey, you don't even put money in the car for gas. I'm waking up at 6 a.m. They also started breathalyzing me for alcohol because when I was on the methadone, I'm drinking. And they picked up
Mhm.
on that and they breathalyzed me. And sometimes I'm blowing and I can't get the methadone for the day. And I'm disconnected from sort of the illegal substance game. So I'm just sick. I'm just sick all the time. And I was like I mean, it's just crazy, right? Trying to moderate my drinking. If I start drinking at this time, and if I only have 2 beers, but I always want more beers. So then I'm angry with myself. I want to have more beers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? So
Does it ever, like, as you're just a quick question, as you're in this, it just sounds like such a painful place to be, 'cause I'm getting this feeling of, like, I'm in this cage and I just can't get out. Does it ever run through your mind of, like, I wonder if I should just get sober? Like, what would that be like?
yeah.
Or is that not yet entering the picture?
I mean, you would think it should be. Like, that should be the thing of like, hey, the solution to this is probably getting sober. I think what happened with me is tracking back so far in my life, I was just used to coming up short. I was just used to failing. Like that life, even as terrible as it was and as disappointing as it was, not only for myself, but for others, it was comfortable. I knew what to expect. Like I knew that it was a shitty life. It was one far below my potential. But when I woke up every day, win, lose, or draw, I knew what it was going to look like for the most part. A life where I actually finished college, started paying my own bills, showing up to a job and being accountable. That was all just so foreign to me. Like that felt like so hard. How could I ever do that? And then, obviously with the criminal record in the school, and I got put on academic probation, and it was just like, and it's no one else's fault but my own, but I just felt like I had lost, everywhere. Like winning was just, no, the only thing I ever won on was if I found a bag that I thought I had lost. That was the only thing I was, kind of looking forward to that could possibly go right.
So clearly something shifted because you are where you are today. And I am super curious to know what that was. What shifted that really made a difference for you?
Yeah. What shifted? Maybe one of the $1 million questions. Accountability came into my life in a way I didn't expect it. And that's what shifted. I mean, my parents had, set up the boundaries and weren't really funding any part of my life anymore. I was living on my brother's floor. I owned nothing. Literally, I had a suitcase of sort of belongings. So after the methadone, I went to detox in South Florida. My grandparents drove down from Canada. I mean, incredible people brought me there. I did the cold turkey detox off methadone, but I mean, I carried on for 6 months. That was a week, and it was like, okay, they took the edge off maybe, but it still messed me up in so many ways of anxiety and everything else. And the reality is that's good. You get off the substance, but like, I still didn't know how to live life on life's terms. I didn't know how to keep a bank account in the positive, show up for a job consistently, be a good person. And I didn't know how to do that stuff. But things really changed in January 2010. I had lived in Canada for a bit with my grandparents, and I was coming back to the US to visit my parents, and I kind of reconnected with this girl. It's always a girl.
Was a girl.
Yeah, it's always a girl in the mix. Good people, though. I mean, that was one of the blessings I had. I was always surrounded by good people, really good people. Like I wasn't enmeshed with a bunch of people using drugs, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but it wasn't my life. People saw something in me. I don't know. I didn't see it myself. So I get off this plane in Raleigh, and the cops are there, and they've got the picture of me and everything. And they're like, hey, yeah, you're under arrest. And I'd been stopped in Toronto too, where I flew out, and the customs agents there asked me about a gazillion questions and pulled me into a room and said it was a big misunderstanding. I knew something was up. Part of me was like, I should have just turned around and, went about my merry way. So basically I got arrested on, I think it was 4 or 5, maybe 6 counts of drug trafficking. I had sold narcotics drugs to an undercover police officer like 2 years prior to this day.
Wow.
A buddy of mine, air quotes for anybody listening, a friend of mine, had a buddy that wanted to get his hands on whatever he could. This buddy of his was a Kerry police officer. I would say that was sort of the starting line to things, right? It wasn't finished, but it was starting. It was accountability that I'd been in jail, and I'd done a scared straight program. I went to the central prison, met death row inmates, tried to convince me. I mean, the amount of interventions, even when I mention them to him here, I'm like, dude, like, what in the heck were you not seeing? But that's the truth of it all, right? That is the truth of it all, is you can't see it. So yeah, I was booked into jail. I was given a $250,000 bond, and I knew I wasn't getting out on this one. And I ended up doing a year in jail and pleading guilty to everything. It was interesting. On sentencing day, the lawyer that I had sort of pulled all the records, all of the treatment over the years, and the binders, probably went on for 10 feet. Thick binders, right? Everything. And it was really the thing that saved me, because I was facing 20 years, maybe even more. And it was that experience where I just decided, like, I don't want to live like this. because that was my reality. I wasn't able to keep things between the lines. I've always got in trouble, always found trouble, always made trouble. And I hung around, some people where it was like, this is always going to be the reality. So I guess that I just kind of zoomed out a little bit and sort of asked myself, like, do you want to live like this? Taking a shower with a bunch of people and being told when you can have lunch and when you go to sleep and when you wake up and how many phone calls you can make. Like, do you want to live like this? Because that's your only option if
Mm.
you don't do something different. And then after that, I was deported. I held the green card in the US, for 17, 18, 19 years. And then I went into ICE custody afterwards for another 4 months and went, I don't know, 10 jails all over the East Coast. And eventually ended up in Atlanta. And then I was put on a plane. And that was an interesting day too. And yeah, sent back and given a lifetime ban to the US. And at the time, you have these moments in life, I think, right, where it's like, when I got arrested there and I understood the magnitude of this, how serious this was, you think, oh man, my life's over. But when I look back, it was the best thing to ever happen.
Mm. So interesting. We talk about the Chinese farmer a lot, that story about, is this a bad thing? Yes, of course it's a bad thing. You're going to jail. Did it turn out to be a good thing? Sounds like it was.
Yeah, it was a great thing. It was what I needed. It sucks that it had to get to that spot maybe in some aspects, but you know what? I consider myself lucky. I mean, there's a lot of people who that would be an incredible alternative to how things ended up for them.
Yes. Yep. That is very true. That is a really interesting we talk about moments of clarity, we talk about the gift of desperation, right? I think the term rock bottom is something that I have a hard time with because what you just described, yes, somebody could say that was my rock bottom, and I don't know how you use that term, but to me, that feels like a glaring moment of clarity of like, this is not how I want to live.
Yeah.
How do you think about that term rock bottom? Like,
I mean,
what does that mean to you?
yeah, it's not one that I run around saying. I mean, I think it's subjective to what people, want to be. I think the reality from all the stories I've heard is people bottom out a lot. You have a lot of
Mhm.
things that don't go well. And do you need that to change? Of course not. Not at all. And it might not even, in all the stories I've heard on the podcast and working with people doing this for 15 years, rarely have I heard a story where somebody hits a quote unquote rock bottom and they change their life the next day. Rarely.
Yeah.
It's that rock bottom moment or that moment of clarity might have come 6 months before, sort of their decision of doing something again or trying again. Most people, when they hear rock bottom, they think DUI, jail. Like most people, when they get out of jail, the first thing they do is drink. The reality is here,
Mhm.
we don't have any coping skills to deal with stuff. And until we learn those or become willing to learn those, different way to live, a different way to see the world. I saw myself as a victim in all of this. Like, well, how could all this happen to me? Like such bad luck. And I had to change that. Like, no, 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 dude, there's no bad luck here. Like you're choosing to live like this. And this is what comes along with it. This is sort of the price to pay, cost of entry. It's not bad luck.
Interesting. And you came to that on your own, like, you didn't go to a formal, like, residential treatment program after you were sent back to Canada. Did you just start doing these things and coming to these realizations on your own? I'm curious about what that next step was.
Yeah. I mean, some of it slowly. Well, nothing was overnight.
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
took the opportunity I had in jail, the downtime. I mean, that is one of the upsides of it. There's downtime. I plugged into a lot
Mhm.
of reading. I used to go
Mm.
to AA meetings. It's not really part of my thing, and it was really never part of my thing afterwards. I think, when I went to the rehab for 12 months and all of the interventions that I thought maybe were for nothing, I think I started to see the benefits of it. Like I had learned stuff, I just wasn't implementing it in my life. So it
Mhm.
wasn't like a lack of
Mhm.
knowledge. And I find this with a lot of people. I think it's always, let me add more. Let me read another book. Let me listen to another podcast. Let me get more knowledge. And I'm just like, especially right now with AI, you can find out anything in 2 seconds. So it's not that we don't know. what we need to do. It's like, how do we do what we know we need to do? So that was where I had to really get to work with things. And I used to go occasionally to Celebrate Recovery meetings. I love the format where you do 1 hour before and you break up into small groups and then have a little chat after. Because when I got out and I moved back up here, I didn't know anybody. Like, I didn't have any friends or anything, nothing really
Yeah.
going for me. And I decided I wanted to work with other people. So I went to college, graduated as an addiction counselor, and started working at a rehab center. And I did that for like 8 years as a clinical caseworker. And that had its ups and downs too, but it was all right for the most part, working with teenagers.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Is there a book that you have read that was particularly impactful for you or meaningful that you like to recommend to people
I don't read books. I mean,
or listen?
I did. I mean, I did when I think one of the books that, I kind of got a lot out of sort of when I was in jail was Brandon Novak's book. I can't remember the name of it. And I think it's kind of come out sense for him that he was kind of doing it to make money to keep things going. But it was just kind of showing me anyway, the depths of all of this, right? How you kind of
Mm.
lose who you are, you know? And then that kind of really made sense to me. I mean, I used to read like Nicholas Sparks, The Notebook, and Percy Jackson books like that. I wouldn't say like a
Mhm.
huge self-help kind of book guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've worked with teenagers. You have been on the other side of the microphone for, I think, close to 300 stories of people sharing their experience. And I have to imagine that there have been some themes that have come up throughout that, some trends that you see in people. And I'm curious to tap into some of the things that you recognize over and over and over that might be helpful insights for the parents who are listening to this.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I think too, one of the things that always stands out to me, and I try to fit this in most episodes, but it doesn't always land. But I wonder with people, I say the night before, say you got sober today, I say last night, did you have any idea today would be your first day? And I had one lady and she said,
Mm.
the night before I got sober, I had bought a new house. I didn't want to drink in my new house. So I went to the park that was around the corner and I drank wine out of a big gulp cup. And I used the bathroom right there in the park or whatever, So no thought, no intention. But that's how quick this can all change. Because today you might not be, or somebody else might not be thinking that they're going to start this journey. But like that's all it takes. It can happen that fast. And I think that reflecting back too, I know it can probably feel like, from a parent's perspective, that's maybe they've gone to treatment and maybe things didn't work out, whatever the interventions or whatever people have been involved with, that has a potential to come back around. Just because maybe the end goal or the end result was like this life of continuous sobriety, that box wasn't checked right now. It doesn't mean that it didn't have some impact on the person, So I think it's realizing that so that we don't get stuck thinking, wow, all for nothing. This will never work out.
Yes.
I never thought it would work out for me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, those are a few.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I have found that to be true. My son went through, I don't know how many treatment programs, and you feel at the time, like, why? Like, that didn't work. Oh my gosh, it didn't work. We just spent all this money, or we just. And then now he's 9 years in recovery. He's like, "Oh, I use those skills all the time, every day." You know, I
Yeah.
I use things that I learned when I was in wilderness therapy or when I was in residential treatment. So it does I'm just glad to have you say that it does go in, but it doesn't always just come right back out. Sometimes it needs to marinate in there for a while, and then it will come out at a later date. So what was the span of time? I'm just curious, like, when was that you ended up starting to really make those shifts in your life once you got back to Canada?
It would have been probably 2 years in.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, for the bulk of things, I mean, the rebuild of the identity, like who was I as a person? What did I want to do? Like, can I find some purpose, some passion, and a vision for life?
Yeah.
Like stopping drinking, stopping drugs is literally the starting line. I mean, we all sober up here and there. So like getting sober was never my problem anyway. I mean, I would run out of money. I'd be in jail. Like I would sober up.
Yeah.
How could I stay sober? And I think that's what I had to zoom out a little bit and figure out, like, how do I begin to build a life that is more valuable than the alternative life? You know, the way I
Mhm.
was living, like what build some stuff that I got to lose. You know, the problem before is every time I would try to get sober and it relapsed, like I had nothing to lose. I had no skin in the game. So it was like, okay, well, cool. I mean, you disappoint yourself, but I was so used to that. That didn't stop me. But in this sort of life, it's like, dude, just start stacking stuff that's important that if you go back to the way you were living before, you're going to have to give all of that up or it will eventually go away. And really leaning into relationships and finding mentors, you know, and not for me, it wasn't all sobriety. It wasn't all sobriety. There was a point where I was like, yeah, I mean, the sobriety is an essential piece. I need that to be part of my life. But like, if I don't like who I am, if I don't have something I'm headed towards or something I'm building, I'll lose interest. I'll get bored really fast with all of this. And then I'll look for that excitement elsewhere, even if it's harmful.
Yeah. Could I ask what the ADHD is like in your life now? Because it is obviously it's not something that just goes away.
Yeah.
And depending on how kind of severe it is, it can be hugely impactful in an adult's life. So if you would be willing to share, what does that look like for you now?
Yeah. And yeah, interesting. You mentioned that too. It was probably about 9 months ago. Maybe, yeah, probably around there. I'm bad with dates. I'm bad with time frames. That's an ADHD thing. Ask me my
Mhm,
kid's
that's an AD oh, totally.
ask me my kids' birthdays. I'll be like, what? I mean, look at my phone. I think there were some things coming up in my life that, you know, 8, 9 months ago that I was like, maybe this is something to have another look at. I have another look at. For years. I didn't really pay it any mind. So I recently had started medication again. And it's just, you don't really know how it's affecting you until you, for me anyway, everybody has different experience with this, but I didn't really know all of the areas of my life that were impacted until I started sort of this process again. One of the big parts is that I'm really hard on myself because I have all of this work I want to get done. I don't do it. I think most people just kind of close the door and move on with their life. Not me. Not me. I'll stay up
Mm,
all night. I have to get it done. And it's not really that important to get done, but to me, it's everything. So things were kind of
right.
showing up. You know, my reactions and how I was carrying myself were not the best all the time. And I was like, hey, I kind of look in some more information. And that's another way that it impacted me. I'm not that squirrely kid that I was, you know, when I was 8,
Right.
but I'm still, you know, kind of impulsively doing stuff. And I kind of impulsively bought a house.
Oh,
Yeah. And
that's a big
so,
impulse.
yeah. So, so those, you know, those types of things came up. So yeah, and it just offered a lot. And I was in a good place, but definitely a better place, more regulated place. I think me anyway, I don't know how other people feel or how they think about it, but I think that that part of beating myself up or why didn't I get that right? Why couldn't I have done that or stuff really can wear you down, your confidence, your self-esteem. And all of these things are important to stay on the journey and understanding too, that it's not, I just see things differently and operate a little bit differently or maybe a lot differently. And that's cool. Like that's okay. And you surround yourself with other people that do other things well. And, you know, the book readers and the organizers and everything else.
The
The
planners and the
planner.
timekeepers.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the first time we connected, how long did it take me to get back to get this figured out? That's my
So,
life.
right.
Like 6 months?
I was, I know. I think I'm really glad that you mentioned the fact that the sobriety is just one element of all of this, because as parents, we get laser focused on sobriety. Has to be sobriety. There has to be, right, this abstinence, and we somehow just latch onto that. Like, if they can just get that part of it, then everything is gonna be solved. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, yes, that's important, but that's just one part of it, and you have to really start adding in those other things that are valuable that you would have to lose if things were to go a different direction. That's a huge insight.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta, what's the term? Recovery capital, maybe in line with that in a sense.
Recovery capital.
Yeah. You have to, and you have to have a
Yeah.
purpose, or especially somebody like me, right, with the ADHD. I get bored very fast. I have to stay moving in a good direction with things. And not that I'm worried in my life today. You know, that's another thing that people start out to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to be wanting this stuff forever. Like you don't want it forever. Like your brain heals. I think about it sometimes before I ever drank and did drugs. I never thought about drinking and doing drugs. I wouldn't say it's completely there, but it's pretty close. And you just build, life. Like people I meet now, if I meet people and I tell them this story, they just look
They're
like,
probably
they're
like,
like,
"What?"
what? Is this guy crazy or something? What's wrong with this guy? There's no way. The really cool thing about all of this is it's not unique to just me. Anybody can make a change, turn things around, and become somebody completely different. Like I see a lot of people, maybe 20 years of substance use, in 1 year, they accomplish more than they did in the last 20. And that's common,
Right.
of like forward motion and opportunities. And people are like, stuff keeps happening for me. And I'm like, yeah, because you're available for it, So it's not just for me. I'm not just a unique person who had all the answers. Like I failed forward a lot, and not
Mm.
failing forward in the terms of drinking again or using drugs again, but in life again. Like a lot of hard lessons, but it's about overcoming the adversity of it. It's about like, hey, what can I take from this? What can I learn? Like I really messed up that time with whatever the decision was I made, but what can I learn? I was never willing to do that before in my life. I was never willing to take accountability. It was everybody else. I was the victim. And because of that, I get to do whatever I want. And yeah, it's so far from reality.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us, telling this story, and also giving us some insight into what might be going on inside the young human that we are trying to parent and try to understand and provide support for, because it is not easy. And I think this will be really, really helpful to start getting at what might be going on in the head of somebody that we love. So I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, of course, Brenda. Thank you so much for having me, and keep up the great work you're doing out there.
Thank you.